Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I wanted to talk about the housing crisis that we have just been chatting about with our guest, but that also the Prime Minister addressed yesterday, both in the speech from the throne as well as in the conversations that he had and interviews afterwards. Because I think we are in a crisis and we need to recognize it as such before we'll be able to take the appropriate actions. So, a few things. Our last guest was talking about how housing had become an investment and that it's created the problem we're in. I disagree. I think that created the froth of the condo market and maybe even the single family dwelling market, but that's gone away. And in fact, I think almost the opposite is true today, is that no one's buying, and we've gone from this fear of missing out, FOMO situation that we may have had a couple of years ago, where prices were being bid up and condos were being bought, and second and third pre-construction condos were being bought, to another situation now that I and others have called fear of overpaying, FOOP. We've gone from FOMO to FOOP, fear of overpaying, and so that I think investment dollars and just regular house buying dollars are on strike right now, and I think this is a real issue. And I think that because of that, we've had this depreciation decline in condo prices, but worse in condo construction. We've had some of that convert to purpose-built rental, but not enough. And I think that housing construction has slowed down. Building permits are probably going to be at an all-time low. And we risk having construction workers that are going to get laid off. We're going to have construction companies and developers that are going to go bankrupt, are going to go out of business. And the lack of supply that we have currently might get even worse. And at the same time, it's almost counterintuitive. We haven't had a real decline in housing prices other than in condos. And so therefore, the income to home value disparity that we've got in Canada today, that is exceedingly higher than it has been in the past, still exists. And we've got the Prime Minister and the Minister of Housing saying that they don't want housing price declines, which I think probably they have to say, otherwise it'll be political suicide if they're actually asking for a crash and a bust in housing prices. But that's probably what we need. And if we're going to get to any kind of number one sense of reasonableness in the ratio between incomes and housing values, and get people building and buying again, we need to have that correction that is long overdue, that hasn't happened as of yet. So I want to take the opportunity to put the situation in perspective, if I could. I had the privilege of interviewing numerous different people on my show, and one of the things that I've been able to talk to people about is the housing situation. The ratio of new condo apartment sales, the number of new condo apartment sales, have declined dramatically from about 10,000 a quarter to less than 1,000 quarter more recently. The condo inventory levels at the same time have continued to go up. So this is sort of counterintuitive, that how can you have a situation where you've got dramatic reduction in sales and the inventory going up? It's because the construction is still happening, even though people aren't buying. And so therefore the inventory is going up dramatically of condos that haven't been sold as of yet. And it's higher than it's been in every year in the last 10 years. And then at the same time, the amount of money that we've got available to buy those condos has gone down dramatically, at least in relative terms to the United States. And you can see, if you did an index from 1995 of Canadian real per capita GDP, Canada's gone up by 40%, while the US has gone up by 60%, such that we tracked the same until 2015. So for 20 years, from 2015, from 1995 to 2015, we tracked fairly closely together the growth in real GDP per capita between Canada and the United States. And then we've separated out dramatically in the last 10 years, such that they've grown by 20% and we have not. which has led to a situation right now where I think that the condo market and the housing market is, as people have described, under cardiac arrest. We've got a 23% decline in home sales in April. We've got the worst April sales since the pandemic. It's a 4% decline in average selling prices. Condo prices are down 6.8%. Detached prices are down 5.4%. New listings are up by 8.1%. And importantly, active listings are up by 54%. What that says to me is that the inventory is up, the selling pressure is up, but people haven't reduced their prices as of yet. So there's more to come. Housing affordability in Canada is the worst it's ever been. It now takes a ratio of home prices to income over 12 times your income to buy a home, 12 times the median income to buy a home. Historically, from 1975 to 2005, it was about 8 times your income. So it's almost twice, at least in 2020, 2021, it was twice, 16. So it has come down from 16 times your income to 14 times your income. The US is 9 times your income. Britain is 8 times your income. Why should we be twice the ratio of income, median income to median household prices as Britain and the US is? It's because we're not building enough. It's because we don't have enough supply. Also because we're not making enough money. I think this is a real challenge of affordability. Home sales are down in April in the GTA 23%. Listings are up by 54%. We've got a problem here that we need to pay attention to. We've got 22,000 unsold pre-construction condos in the Greater Toronto Area and 7,000 that are on MLS. We've got 177 sales per month, pre-construction, 1,000 resale, leads up to 72 months of housing inventory. Typically, it's about 6 to 8 months. 72 months. That's several years of inventory based on the current level of sales. We're not going to meet it. It's finally cheaper in Toronto to rent than to buy. And so that's what I think smart people are doing. It's a real challenge that we need to really think about and how we're going to solve this problem that we've got. So what do I think caused this problem? I think there's a couple of different things. First of all, and most importantly, it's lack of supply. It's just a basic law of economics. As you have a lower supply and you've got the same demand, and frankly, demand's been increasing, what's going to happen is pricing is going to go up. And I think we've done that in a number of different ways. And I've talked about this before, but let me echo it. First and foremost, it's red tape and bureaucracy, where it takes 3 times as long to get a housing development approved as it does to actually build it. That doesn't make any sense. There's a great new book out that I recommend to you called Abundance, which tracks that we in Canada and the United States have become really good at saying no to things and regulating the heck out of things and terrible at building things. What we need is a national building program, again, comparable to, building a railway. In the United States, the interstate highway or the Neil Deal. In Canada, a healthcare system or maybe a daycare. We need to think about building rather than just regulating. It takes 24 different committees, reports to get a development approved in the city of Toronto. I think that's crazy. And we've got to streamline the red tape and regulation dramatically. We've got to have planning that wants to approve things rather than turn things down. We need to have an attitude within the planning departments that's more like the economic development departments that say, we want you to come to our municipality and build. We want you to build good housing. We want you to build the right housing that our residents want. But we want you to come and build rather than stay away. The last thing we want is for you to build. Development fees have gone up by 1,000%. It has been one of the little dirty secrets of municipal funding, that what they've done is they've forced new homeowners, young people, renters that want to become homeowners, to carry too much of public infrastructure monies. And they used it saying growth needs to pay for growth. Well, you know what? They used it to build fire stations, police stations, libraries, community centers, a whole bunch of things that all of society should have paid for, not just the newcomers. And lots of people have talked about this. You know, the development fees are over 100 grand in Toronto per unit. That's equal to the down payment that most people could have afforded. And it's paid upfront by these developers and passed on to the consumers. No matter what these politicians may have said in the past about, oh, rich developers pay it, they don't. They pass it on to the consumers. So it's a tax on young people. And Vaughan and Mississauga have reduced them dramatically. I think what we should do is reduce them, if not eliminate them across the board. Taxes, development fees and other taxes add up to over 31% of the cost of a new home. Why are we taxing something we need more of, more greater than almost any other sector of society? It's like every criticism we've made of Donald Trump and tariffs. That's what we've done. We have put a unbelievably high tariff on home building when we want more homes. Doesn't sound like it's very logical. NIMBYism. We have created a system that incentivizes a whole bunch of people to go out to protect the net worth in their home by going out to community meetings, by complaining to their counselors, by doing what they can to complain about new housing. And the problem with that is it might make sense for that one individual, but it makes terrible sense for society at large. And what we've done is we've got this massive free rider problem where somebody wants to protect the traffic in their little community or their view of a park or their lack of a shadow or something like that, which is an argument that needs to be addressed and thought of in some circumstances. But when the logical extension of that is we underbuild the amount of housing we need for our society dramatically and housing prices escalate dramatically, it becomes a disaster for society and we need to end it. I think the Greenbelt was well-meaning, but it was a mistake because what we've done is we've created this moat around Toronto where it's impossible to build beyond the moat or in the moat. And we've removed a whole bunch of housing that should be available for people to build single-family homes. Having conservation areas, having valleys that are truly worthy of conservation, I think makes a ton of sense to exclude from building. And I think we did that with the conservation authorities that we had previously in the provincial parks that we had previously. The Greenbelt, though, which took a whole bunch of farmland, a lot of it owned by developers that were planning on development, a lot of it actually close to, if not with some infrastructure servicing readily available, really stole from our young people the dream of owning a home with a backyard. And we saying they have to live in a 500 square foot shoebox in a condominium building or a rental building. Well, you know what? That is right for some people that want to live close to their jobs in downtown Toronto or like the high density lifestyle. But it's not right for everybody. And that suburban dream that my generation had, that my father's generation had, has been stolen from our next generation because of things like this. And I think it needs to be changed. And also lack of transit. We have underinvested in transit for a long period of time, which means that it is more expensive and more time consuming to travel from where these new suburban developments might take place to their jobs. And if we had invested in transit, we might have been able to create those opportunities for people to build single family homes. So lack of supply of housing is the number one problem. Number two is excess demand. And we have had an immigration system that has been a little bit out of control for the last couple of years. I think it has got too much of the blame. I think that on margin, the temporary foreign worker program and the student program have brought more people into the country than should have been brought in. But I think immigration is something Canada needs. We've built our country on immigration. We need to grow our immigration because of the lack of natural births in Canada, such that we've gone from 5 working people supporting every senior to 2 working people supporting every senior. So our healthcare system is going to be challenged. Our old age security system, other than it's currently well funded, is going to be challenged in the future. So we need to grow our population base, but we don't need to grow it with temporary foreign workers and students that are coming and going. or jumping the immigration queue by using the come as a student and then apply. What it should be is an ability to attract the people that we want, whether they be qualified immigrants or immigrants that have got capital. One of the concerns that I've got that I've heard over and over again is that 20% of the economic immigrants that come to Canada actually leave within 3 to 5 years. Half of them going back to their country of origin and half going to the United States. So our net immigration ends up being critically important. There's 800,000 Canadians living in the United States. That's a province of Canada that we lost that's living in the United States. That's the brain drain, not a problem with immigration. So I do think that there is some issues in regards to demand that might have been greater than otherwise planned for, and we should have planned correctly, and primarily with temporary foreign workers and students. But we need immigration, and so therefore, let's just get our act together and plan for it. I also think that we've got a situation where we've got no productivity in housing, or a very low level of productivity, and so therefore, the supply that we do have is more expensive than it otherwise would be because we don't have productivity. We are using building techniques that we've been using for 50 years. And why is that? I think, we've heard a lot about we need to have one economy in Canada versus 13. We've got hundreds of little fiefdoms in building across Canada, where every municipality has slightly different zoning rules, slightly different rules of how you apply. And if you take a look at a lot of studies that have been done, one of the differences between the United States and Canada is they have large housing construction companies. We don't have that in Canada because it ends up being a mom and pop small business industry because of all these different regulations. And some people have, suggested that even within a city, different wards have different rules because the local councillors and the city planners that support those councillors implement those rules in a very different way. We've got different building codes in different provinces. We've got old, antiquated rules in regards to fire escapes and setbacks and lots of things. And we add on regulation after regulation in regards to environmental issues, but we don't take off old regulations. Lots of people have said that our fire suppression systems have changed so radically and improved so radically that the demand for 2 fire escapes that was put in place decades ago is a relic of yesteryear, and we don't need it. But because of that, we end up still demanding it, and we make housing, particularly lower cost housing, uneconomic. So we've got some major problems. This has been compounded by exactly what we were talking about before, which is during the bulge, the bubble, we did have a lot of cheap money, and the investors in pre-construction condos went a little crazy, and developers probably didn't mind it because they could sell 75% of the units, get the construction financing that they were looking for, and go on with construction. And so therefore there was speculation. And so I think that our prior guest was right, that this investment methodology impacted us, but I think it added the froth. I was in a really interesting meeting back in, I think it was 1998 or 1999, when we had a tech sector bubble. And an economist, it was a chief economist from the Royal Bank, came to an office that I was in Vancouver at the time and said, as soon as people start using Visa cards to buy stocks, you're into a speculative budget bubble. I think, it's when realtors were using home equity lines of credit to buy their 3rd, 4th, and 5th pre-construction condo, we knew something was wrong. We were into a bubble. And so I think that it added the froth, but it wasn't the solution, the cause of all the problems. But what are the solutions? I want to take a break for a couple minutes, 2 minutes, and I'm going to come back and I'm going to suggest what I think the solutions are, given the roadmap of failure that I hope I've laid out for you so far. Welcome back, everyone, to the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I've been talking about the housing crisis, and I've talked about how we've gone from FOMO to FOOP. We've gone from fear of missing out, where people were buying like crazy, speculating, and bidding up prices of condos and houses, to FOOP, fear of overpaying, where the last thing people want to do is buy because they think that it might be cheaper in the future and they could lose money, which makes sense. And so that leads to one of the problems that you've got in any kind of a down market is this line about your first loss is your smartest loss. If you know the market's going down, price down, move the inventory, and live to sell and build another day. And I think too many sellers aren't doing that, and that's because we haven't come to the realization that this bubble was a bubble and it's got to come down. The median household income to um, to prices are 14 to 16 times. 14 now, were a year ago 16 times in Canada. They're half that in the United States. Why should we pay twice as much for our house relative to our income as Americans, as people in the UK? It's wrong, and it's got to change. And I think it means we're not going to double our income, regrettably. Housing prices are going to come down on average, and they've got to. That's the only way we can get some sanity back in the marketplace. Right now, because of this concern, I think buyers are on strike. Not all of them. Some people are buying. But I think buyers that don't need to buy because they're moving, because they, got new kids and need a bigger home, or are gone through a divorce and need to find a new place to live. Shocking as that might seem, people that aren't in that kind of a scenario, I think, are on strike right now and aren't buying. And so therefore, that investors that our prior guest was concerned about have left the market right now and aren't bidding things up. If anything, what they're doing is because of defaults, because of assignment sales, because of being not closing and being sued by developers, it's almost acting like a short sale in a stock market. And so I think that you've got this negative sentiment in the marketplace. And then I think there's a lot of smart people that are saying, why not rent? If I've got two different living opportunities, and one where I rent and the other one where I own. In the past, if that ownership opportunity cost me a lot more money because of the high mortgage I was going to have, but I thought that I was going to make huge amounts of money as the prices went up, I would own. But today, if I'm not sure those prices are going to go up and still it's going to cost me a lot more money in mortgage interest to own, why don't I just rent? And I've been talking to so many smart people that are renting right now that I think has got to tell you something. And as those people move out of the buying market into the renting market, what's going to happen is rents might go up, but selling prices should logically come down. So what's the solution? I think it's a number of things. I think number one, we need to get back to sanity in pricing. We need to have the price of homes relative to median income get down to that 8 to 10 ratio that you've got in the United States, that you got in the UK, rather than the 14 to 16 that we've got in Canada. It was 6 or 4, 2 decades ago, 3 or 4 decades ago. And when I graduated, my dad told me 3 times my income is what I should be thinking about. Actually, maybe it was 3 times my income was the mortgage. So maybe it was 4 when you added in the down payment. But that's what we used to be told. That's what we used to think. And today, it's 14 to 16 times. It's crazy. I think that we need to increase dramatically supply, and I've talked about that. I think development fees need to come down or be eliminated. I think that we need to rip up half of the regulations that we've got. I think we build regulations on top of red tape, on top of regulations, on top of committees, on top of consultants, on top of reports that are needed, and we never get rid of some of the old ones. I think we need to completely dramatically reduce the amount of red tape and the time it takes to get approvals. In the Greater Toronto Area, people say over and over again, well, if you don't get what you've applied for to the city, take it to the Ontario Land Tribunal and you'll get it there. And that too often is the case. What that says to me is that the city planners and the city councilors aren't doing their job, because they're allowing the OLT, the Ontario Land Tribunal, to be the adult in the room that's actually going to say, as a society, we need more housing, or maybe it's the provincial government. As a society, we need more housing, and so therefore we're going to approve this housing. But then the local planner and the local councillor get to say, well, to my residents, I fought against it. So, keep voting for me, because they know they're going to get overruled. I interviewed Joe Barrage, principal of urban strategies, and he said that our system of housing approvals allows the counselors and the planners to not be adults because they know that the OLT or the Ontario Municipal Board in the past to be the adult in the room that's going to do the right thing for society in its whole. It's wrong. We elect these people to run our cities and or hire them to run our cities. And if they're going to get overruled by the OLT, they should learn that and start adapting to it and start approving the projects that should be and need to be approved. I think we need to have as of right zoning. We've talked about this in major transit station areas where within a certain area proximate to a subway station or a GO train station or a major bus station, we would have minimum densities and improve the maximum densities and the heights. And make it such that people don't have to go through the whole process to get that approved. Just as of right zoning, like we've been talking about triplexes and quadplexes up and down major arterials and streets. We need to make it easier for people to build and quicker for people to build. I also think what we need to do is think hard and long about improving productivity. And I think the way we do that, the Prime Minister's talked about modular housing, and I think that's an option and one that we should support. But not everyone wants to live in a modular housing. Why don't we have more sizable construction companies with economies of scale? I think it's because we've got massive overregulation, differing regulation province by province, implemented differently in different municipalities, building codes that are different and changing all the time. And we need to rationalize all that. If we want to have economies of scale, if we want to have productivity, let's create a regulatory system that allows the example in the United States of the D.R. Hortons or the Lennars or something like that. They become really big. Great Gulf makes more money building homes in the United States, a Canadian company, that does in Canada because it's easier with economies of scale to do that in the United States than it is in Canada. It's a shame. It's wrong. And then I think what we need to do is we need to be honest with people that what we've got is a bubble. It's like the tech bubble. It's like the bubble in the United States in 2006, 7, and 8 before the housing crisis there. And housing prices are probably going to come down. But don't worry and don't get overly upset about this, because if you're overpricing a house by $1 million and you buy another overpriced house that's $1 million, you haven't really made any money. Contrary, if you lose $500,000 on that house in value, market value, but you're able to buy another house that's $500,000 cheaper, again, you haven't really lost any money. So in a bubble, you don't make any money, and in a bust market, you don't actually lose any money, unless what you're doing is borrowing in a home equity line of credit a whole bunch of money against that home equity line that has gone down in value. But we shouldn't be supporting people that want to do that. So I do think that housing needs to come down. I don't think it's a paper loss that people are going to have to incur. But it's not something that politicians need to be scared about. It's something that we can explain. And more importantly, then the people that are going to be able to then buy longer term are going to make some money. And you go back to places where people haven't taken the losses. And what ends up happening is you get a decade of stagnation. Look at Japan, decade of stagnation. Look at what's happening in China. I think that they're going to, because they're trying to support this real estate market and not allow it to decline, are getting to a situation where they might end up having a bigger bust in the future. And lots of people have been talking about that. So I think we have to accept, with this massive decline in housing volumes of sales, we are likely to get some losses. And, I share with you a couple of the statistics that, we've seen in the marketplace. We have seen some significant losses, primarily in condos, but it's happening. And I think that you're going to see more and more repriced opportunities. And bottom line, the biggest issue is this issue in regards to the ratio of home prices to the average disposable income. Where, as I said before, from 1975 to 2005, for 30 years, we were pretty similar to the United States. at about 6 to 8 times income equal to the housing prices. And then after 2005, we separated out dramatically from the United States. Number one, caused by the housing decline that happened in the United States that didn't happen in Canada. But then just this massive appreciation that took place in Canada that hasn't gone away in the last couple of years, such that right now it's about 14 times our income in Canada, and it's at about 8 to 9 times in the United States, almost twice as expensive in Canada relative to income to buy a home. And this is compounded effectively also by our taxation system, because in the United States, they get a tax deduction for the mortgage interest, and we don't. If anything, they should be paying more for homes than we pay for homes. We've got to solve this system. And I think I've given you some suggestions on how we can do that. That's Brian Crombie for the Brian Crombie Radio Hour. I do have the pleasure of coming to you every night at 6 o'clock on 960 AM, streaming online at www.saga960am. Post all my videos and podcasts on my website, briancrombie.com, on social media, on YouTube channel, and on numerous different podcast servers, because I want to use this platform to hopefully make some positive change. And housing crisis is one of the issues that I think should be one of the number one, maybe after combating Donald Trump's tariff issues and threats. Because I think we've stolen from our young people the opportunity and dream of home ownership, and that's wrong. Let's correct that, please. Good night, everybody.